baseball.
This is a simple game. You throw the ball, you hit the ball, you catch the ball.
A game rich in history and tradition. And
You lollygag the ball around the infield. You lollygag your way down to first. You lollygag in and out of the dugout.
a game that gets a little bit weird.
You know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygaggers.
Lollygaggers.
This is the Lollygaggers Podcast. Now here's your host, Chris Bull Brom.
Oh, well, excuse me for having an opinion, pal.
Well, greetings and saturations from a soggy northeast Colorado where we've got an abundance of rain, much needed rain thanks to Mother Nature, and it looks like more on the way. I'm Chris Bull Brom, and welcome to the inaugural show of the Lollygaggers Podcast, the series premiere, the pilot episode, as it were. Now, before we dive into what you can expect from this semi-weekly podcast, heck, if you eat your vegetables and you're on your best behavior, maybe even more than once a week. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we get into that, if your business or organization would like to sponsor the Lollygaggers Podcast, get in touch with us. Shoot us an email at thelollyaggerspodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on all the social medias, the Lollygaggers Podcast on Facebook and at lollygagger_pod on Twitter. Once again, this is the Lollygaggers Podcast. I'm Chris Bull Brom. And if you're wondering to yourself, what the heck did I get myself into? I being you. Just know that we're all kind of wondering that as well. For those of you wondering what a lollygagger is, well, all you have to do is go stream Bull Durham. I'd say go pop in a copy of Bull Durham, but how many people, still have DVDs and or VHS tapes, right? But, just go find a copy of Bull Durham online and watch it there.
You lollygag the ball around the infield. You lollygag your way down to first. You lollygag in and out of the dugout. Do you know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygaggers.
Lollygaggers.
There you go. A lollygagger. A ball player that, lollygags. What does that have to do with this podcast? I'm not entirely sure. The idea behind the weekly podcast, though, is to focus on the stories that surround the game of baseball. I'm a massive history nerd, especially when it comes to baseball. I mean, where does the phrase out of left field come from? Exactly. Baseball. And it generally means something unique or just downright weird. And, that's what I love about the game of baseball is there are just some downright weird stories, some unique stories, some outstanding historical moments, stories about guys and their antics and their accomplishments. I mean, you've heard of the curse of the Bambino, right? But what about the curse of the Billy Goat in Chicago? Yeah, how about some of those crazy nicknames that this great game has boasted over the years? Oil Can, Catfish, the Heater from Van Meter, and so many others. But how do they get those nicknames? Where do they come from? How do I get one of those? Oh, wait, I've already got a nickname. They call me Bull. And I'd love to tell you the story of that. I wish it was super cool, but it's kind of lame. And just know that it doesn't mean I'm full of bull. It just means I'm apparently built like one. So, but I'll let you think whatever you want to think, and we'll call it good. Now, we are going to talk about some of the just downright craziness of baseball history, like the pitcher who was struck by lightning, finished the game, then throw a no-hitter like a week later because they were built different back then. We'll touch on some of the latest happenings in today's game as well because, again, you can't have today's game without the past and vice versa. They all tie together. And so we'll include a little bit of modern baseball as well. In addition to all of that, we'll have the occasional guest talking with various figures in the game of baseball at a variety of levels, whether it's players, coaches, former players, broadcasters, what have you. We'll get their perspective on the game from what they do and find out why they love baseball as much as the rest of us, and then get them to share some of their own weird, unique, and fun baseball stories. Now, if you're wondering what my credentials are, trust me, you're not alone. I'm just a small-town radio guy, blessed with the love of the game and the gift of gab. I could spend hours upon hours upon hours cussing and discussing baseball. Just ask, anybody who's wasted most of their day talking to me about baseball. I've been broadcasting baseball play-by-play for nearly 10 years at primarily the high school level, but some collegiate level as well. I've been serving as our Major League Baseball analyst for the group of radio stations that I work for currently for the past 4 or 5 years. I was even a credentialed media member covering the Colorado Rockies one summer, which was an amazing experience. And then the pandemic happened and haven't had a chance to get back to that since then. But it was outstanding, and I look forward to the time that I get to hang out in the press box once again and take in some baseball. I've been a lifelong Rockies fan. I'll be taking your sympathy cards and condolences at the end of the show. And that's about it. Those are my quote-unquote qualifications for hosting a podcast. And I've always wanted an outlet, to be able to talk baseball, to share with everybody some of the craziness that this game has boasted over the years. And I'm looking forward to it. And my wife finally said, hey, you should start a podcast. And I always do what my wife says because I'm a smart husband. So here we go. If you want to dive deep into the strange history of baseball and share my love of the game week in and week out, then let's get after it, shall we?
How can you not be romantic about baseball?
Now, while I do want to focus the majority of this podcast on the past and the history of baseball, I think we'd all be doing ourselves a disservice if we also didn't focus on the present state of the game. As we all know, the current commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, has spent the past several years running around like Joe Pesci's character in Home Alone, worrying about the drop in fan interest in Major League Baseball. And while Mr. Manfred's head is aflame, obsessed with the number of baseball fans attending and or watching games, well, we've seen a variety of new rules and regulations focused on improving the pace of play and hoping to expand offensive output across the league to make the game more fun and accessible to the average everyday fan. But, and I've always wanted to do this on a podcast, I'm going to take my glasses off and I'm going to say into the microphone, let me blow your mind right now. The economy. According to a report from PlayMA.com, one of the driving factors behind the drop in fan attendance league-wide actually has less to do with the game itself and more to do with, wait for it, the state of the economy. I know, shocker, right? Like everything else impacted by inflation, the cost to attend a Major League Baseball game has been on the rise. We're talking tickets, parking, concessions, merchandise, on and on and on and on. And in a new survey of over 1,000 Americans, PlayMA.com learned that more than 1 in 3, about 35% actually, are not going to as many Major League Baseball games in 2023 as they have in the past because of the economy. So how much do you need to set aside to catch a few pro baseball games this season? Well, they've figured out that the average ticket cost of each major league team and then determined how many hours the average American would need to work to go cheer on their favorite team. Hey, bada, 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 so bada. Hey, bada, 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 so bada. Kennedy, so bada. Now, according to PlayMA.com, again, that's where you can find this survey, 47% of those surveyed planned on going to a Major League Baseball game in 2023. Those planning want to go to an average of 3 games. Now, additionally, 58% of people say they prefer to watch Major League Baseball games in person instead of on TV. Can't disagree with them there, because nothing beats a day at the ballpark, right? However, 35% of Americans say they aren't going to as many games this year because of the economy, and 58%, so more than half the people surveyed, and we're talking 1,000 Americans who were surveyed by PlayMA.com, say it's difficult to go to any professional sports events because of the economy, and that there's a need to be more mindful about where money is going and being spent on, because that's just good common sense. As much as I'd love to go to the ballpark day in and day out, I know that I have to, pay bills. I have to feed my children. I have to clothe my children. I have to make sure that we have a roof over our heads, and electricity and running water and all that. So, priorities. and such. Now, PlayMA.com has determined how many hours Americans would need to work to pay for 3 tickets based on the average hourly wage of the largest metropolitan city closest to each MLB team. So for states like California and New York and Florida, where they have multiple teams in that state, they utilize the closest metropolitan city to determine the average hourly wage. Now, according to their work at PlayMA.com, people living in Houston have to work the most out of all Major League Baseball fans to afford tickets. Fans have to do more than a day's work, about 9 hours, to pay for 3 tickets, with $58.61 as the average ticket cost for an Astros game and the $20 average hourly wage. It's quite an investment to go watch the defending World Series champs. And again, we're talking average ticket cost. So $58.61 is the average. There are more expensive tickets, there are less expensive tickets, but in a situation like this, you find the average, and the same with the hourly wage. Some people make more, some people make less. That's why you have an average. Now, not far behind the Astros, and not surprisingly, are the New York Yankees. Fans need to put in about 8 hours of work to go to 3 Yankees games, but here's the kicker. Interestingly enough, despite being in the same city, New York Mets tickets cost half of what Yankees fans pay, so it only takes Mets fans about 4 hours of work to make the money needed for 3 tickets. And right now, is basically watching the same team because they're both not off to the best of starts. Meanwhile, Boston Red Sox tickets cost the most across all of Major League Baseball. The average ticket to catch a game at Fenway, $61.71 per game. Again, that's average. With Boston's average hourly wage of $32, though, Boston fans only need to work about 6 hours to pay for 3 tickets. So while the tickets themselves cost more than anybody else, folks making that dough in Boston and only have to work about 6 hours to pay for 3 tickets. So then that begs the question, who are the most affordable Major League Baseball teams to see in 2023? Well, not surprisingly, they're all smaller market teams like San Diego, the Colorado Rockies. Fans in those cities only need to work 2 hours to make enough for 3 tickets. Heck, I've worked 2 hours already today, so bang, bang, boom. Can go catch me some Rockies games. Now, not far behind that are the Seattle Mariners, the San Francisco Giants, and the Oakland Athletics, which only require about 3 hours of work. Actually, I think, if I remember correctly, the Oakland A's are actually paying fans to attend games. I'm not sure, but I'll check my sources on that. It may be time to call Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill to bail out the boys by the bay.
There are rich teams, and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us.
Now, the report also goes into the costs of splurging on your trip to the ballpark, like upgrading to a suite or spending money on other indulgences at the ballpark, like food, drinks, ticket upgrades, better parking, team swag, things like that. And apparently fans spend an extra $51 on average outside of their ticket cost while at the game. So let's just take into account the $58.61 it costs you to go to an Astros game. Then you spend, on average, another $51 on other stuff, food, merchandise, parking, all of that. You're talking over $100 just to go to one game. That's $51 extra at one game for a ticket that costs you $58.61 to go to a game. So you're talking $109, almost $110 per game. Times 3 games, that's $330. That's like a car payment for a lot of us. So how do you save some dough to make sure you can attend those games? Well, when asked what they'd give up to save money for Major League Baseball tickets, people said fast food would be the first to go. In total, 28% would skip those fast food meals to afford a ticket. 25% would give up going out to eat. Now, see, I would consider those the same thing, but apparently there's fast food and then there's going out to eat at like a restaurant. Apparently it's a different thing. So a bold 22%, though, said they would forego alcohol to get the money needed for some Major League Baseball tickets. Now, I'm going to guess that the majority of those folks are not Oakland A's fans because I'm pretty sure alcohol is the only thing getting them through a game.
Welcome back to Major League Baseball. Sort of. Paid attendance today is
1,412.
Anyway, going even further, 1 in 10 actually declared they'd skip out on a spring break trip to save up for an MLB game, and 27% would take front row tickets to a Major League Baseball game over a spring break trip. So there you go. You can see all that information in depth from the report. Go to playma.com/news/MLB-game-costs-report. That's playma.com/news/MLB-game-costs-report. They even have some information about fans planning on attending spring training games, but that information is obviously outdated. The report came out in January. I just happened across it recently because I'm still trying to get the hang of this whole internet thing. Back in my day, we had to walk uphill both ways just to get to the internet. Again, go to playma.com to check out the full report there.
Ball into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
Anyway, there you have it. The first episode of the Lollygaggers Podcast officially in the scorebook. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me on this weekly meandering, wandering journey of baseball fandom and nonsense. Join us for our next episode as we start our dive into the history of the game and pull back the curtain, as they say, on the curse of the Bambino. We've all heard of it, but how much do we actually know about it? We'll find out how Babe Ruth cost the Boston Red Sox years, decades, generations of World Series titles. Be sure to like and follow the Lollygaggers Podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. Join us on social media by liking the Lollygaggers Podcast on Facebook and following at @lollygagger_pod on Twitter. And if you want to share your thoughts, opinions, or ideas for future shows, just shoot us an email at the lollygaggerspodcast@gmail.com. And again, if your business or organization is interested in sponsoring the Lollygaggers Podcast, reach out to us and let us know. You can message us on those social media platforms or, again, email the lollygaggerspodcast@gmail.com. Until we meet again, remember, in the words of the late, great Yogi Berra, 90% of this game is half mental.
Wait, what?
This has been the debut of the Lollygaggers Podcast. I'm Chris Brom. Thanks for tuning in.
That's all. We got one hit.
You can't say on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.